Let's go down to the Hilltop where number 18 Pitt, undefeated Pitt, takes on number 20 SMU. The Ponies are 7.5-point favorites. This is a 7 p.m. kick on ACC Network, which, man, it really stinks that
we
this is
get the biggest game of the year potentially in the Big Ten at 11 a.m. Central Time, and we get Pitt and SMU on the ACC Network. Like, what are we doing, guys?
I know. There's some really head-scratching TV decisions as far as channels go. But I mentioned both teams undefeated in ACC play. Pitt's undefeated overall. And the winner here officially stamps their case as no longer a dark horse to be in the running to make it to Charlotte, but perhaps a legitimate contender. And I don't want to say favorite necessarily, with Clemson and Miami still undefeated and they don't play each other. But Pitt will have to play Clemson. So at that point, maybe you would get a favorite. But it sets the stage for some late season drama in the ACC. 7.5. It feels like a large point spread considering two things. One, Pitt just turned Syracuse over. They had 5 interceptions against the Orange last week. And SMU, in a winning effort, did turn the ball over 6 times. I feel like Pitt's defense will be able to travel. We've seen that happen this season so far. That spread feels a little high to me.
I'm with you. And I think that Pitt is a team that not just the Vegas spreads, but some of the algorithms like the stat nerds that we love so much might be a little bit behind on, because a lot of them are ranking them lower on their power rankings, lower in the like the SP Plus doesn't really love Pitt. A lot of the other ones don't either. I think they're just a little bit behind. Pitt's had some wonky wins. I'm thinking, you mentioned the Syracuse win last week. Their offense, if you just look at the stats, it looked putrid, but they didn't need to because they got 3 free touchdowns defensively. Also thinking about the Cincinnati game early on in the season where they had to come back furiously late. They've had some wonky wins, and I think that's hurting them in some of these algorithms, but they're 6-1 against the spread this year. So I'll roll with Pitt on the road to cover the spread. I think SMU can win this game outright. It's going to be really interesting, though, if Jennings can play. If Jennings, he's questionable right now. Once he took over this offense, it was just a completely different gear for SMU. And Pitt's defensive line, they're top 20 in the country in sacks. So if Jennings can't go and it's Preston Stone back there, that's going to be really something to watch, because they really struggled to protect Preston Stone early on in the year. And the mobility of Jennings really helped out that offensive line, gave them time to gel and get to where they are today.
Yeah, I think when we went to BYU to watch that game earlier in the season, the only game that SMU's lost to this point, I think Preston Stone was sacked on 3 of his 5 dropbacks, if I'm not mistaken. And
it wasn't like his fault either. It was like that. They're in the backfield and he's on the ground.
Yeah, lost 26 yards on 5 dropbacks, which was insane. The offensive line has gone through ups and downs, there's no doubt. And one of the big reasons that Kevin Jennings was anointed the starting quarterback, very similarly, it feels like, to maybe Marcel Reed in College Station, is he can just move. He can evade the pressure and keep his eyes down the field. And so far, it's worked for SMU. Now, the luck almost ran out last week when they were turning the ball over like it was going out of style. But if Kevin Jennings is healthy, I think that gives the Ponies their best chance to win. Eli Holstein has also been banged up. There was a question of whether or not he would start in this game. Pat Narduzzi has said that he'll be fine. He's ready to go, but I think it is something that's worth monitoring going forward. For me, I think you have to basically lay this win at the feet of which defense stops the run more effectively. Both of these teams are in the top 10 in stopping the defense so far. Rashard Smith has carried the load for SMU. It's been Des Reed doing everything for Pitt, both in the running game and catching a lot of passes out of the backfield as well. So we know the Ponies have a great defense. They're at home. I do tend to lean with you here. I think SMU gets the job done, but I like this to be a much closer game than the 7.5-point spread that Vegas is indicating right now. The leaning, I think, if you are taking SMU to cover, is the Ponies are much better at explosive plays than Pitt does. Pitt doesn't really have that game-breaking ability to hurt you down the field, whereas SMU, I feel like, has a little bit more to that game. They go east-west a lot, but you give Kevin Jennings the right time, and he can throw the ball deep down the field as well. I feel like SMU's offense to this point has a little bit more giddy up and go than Pitt's does. So if you're taking SMU, I think that's what you're banking on. If you're taking SMU for a different reason, definitely let us know in the comments at 3Tech Pod on YouTube. Let us know why you're placing that bet.
I think my favorite bet in this game, though, might be the under, actually. It's
I
60
agree.
and a half right now.
Yeah.
And these two offenses are great. Don't get me wrong, but the defenses are really underrated. And I think they're going to have some good days, especially if you have one or more backup quarterbacks seeing time in this game. Preston Stone's not your typical backup. I get that. But yeah, I like the under a lot in this game. I was surprised that it was so high.
I think, especially given the fact that both teams want to run the ball, if they're not turning it over, which, listen, both teams have shown a little bit of a proclivity to do that. Holstein was turning it over a ton against Cal a couple of weeks ago. SMU, obviously, half a dozen times at Duke. But both of these teams want to run the football. SMU's averaging over 200 yards per game. Pitt is a little bit more middle of the pack with 160. So I'm with you there as well. We agree on the first two games, all of our bets so far, which I don't know. Maybe that's concerning. Maybe that's a good thing. We'll see.
Gracious hip power.